To review just a little bit before we start into chapter 6, verse 1, we think about the beginning of the tribulation period is in chapter 4, verse 1. When John is called into heaven, that's a picture of the church being called into heaven, and that's the conclusion of the era of the church. The church membership is fulfilled. And the era of the church ends the moment the tribulation begins. Also, at that simultaneous moment, the era of the Israel, the last 7 years of the era of Israel begins, and it's the last 7 years of the last. It would be Daniel's 70th week in the time of Jacob's trouble. The first 7 years of the tribulation will conclude the era of Israel and the consummation of Israel. But we saw in chapter 4, verse 1, the tribulation begins, but during the judgment celebration of the church, we don't see any of the judgments on the earth. All of those are withheld until the judgment celebrations have concluded. And I postulated that the church judgment celebration takes about 75 days and then a few days intermission. And then in chapter 5, we see the judgment of the judgment celebration of the good angels. And that takes, I would postulate, about 75 days. And so from Revelation chapter 4, verse 1 to Revelation chapter 6, verse 1, I believe is about 6 months. So that brings us to the seals, and seal 1, seal 2, seal 3, seal 4 all pertain to horses, and different ones have made big deals about these. There's been all manner of grand interpretations, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and many different speculations on what these horses and what these riders represent. And obviously they are symbolic. And I believe that all 4 of them are giving us more information about Antichrist. We know from from Daniel chapter 9 that Antichrist is going to sign a treaty with Israel for exactly 7 years, or sign a new treaty, or renew a treaty. But in either case, peace treaty, a trade treaty, some type of an agreement for exactly 7 years. And then we don't see anything more out of Antichrist until chapter 6, verse 1, and that brings us to seal number 1, the white horse. And I believe all of these are giving us information. We don't see anything out of Satan since the beginning of the tribulation, but now we're getting some information about him. Seal 1 is a white horse, and he goes forth conquering and to conquer with a bow. And I think we see from that he is the military leader. He's given a crown as well during that time span. So I think he starts out as a military leader of a powerful country, but not one of the more powerful. And he's may be a general, and he may be going to battles, but he receives a crown, so he becomes the head of this country. And possibly the king, since it says crown. And he's conquering countries, smaller countries there in the area of where he is, and he's threatening other countries. And that's the seal 1, the white horse. Now seal 2, the red horse, he is given the power to take peace from the earth, and he's given a great sword. So we see here that World War III takes place, and this is about 1 year into the tribulation. And I believe that this is where the United States might side with one country, and several of the other more powerful countries might side with the other country. But irregardless, world war is going to devastate a lot of the countries, a lot of the more powerful countries, and nothing's going to be the same after this point. And it says that he's given, and I believe that he is Antichrist on this red horse. He is given a great sword. And today we would tend to think that that's nuclear weapons, and so that would mean that he did not have a nuclear weapon before. So as we think about countries he might come from, we could eliminate any of the countries that have nuclear weapons already, like the United States, China, Russia, Pakistan, India, North Korea, all the countries that have nuclear weapons. Antichrist is not going to come from those. But at some point during the tribulation, at this second seal, he's given a great sword, and that possibly might be nuclear weapons. But or might be some type of a newly developed weapon. It's a great weapon of some sort. But right now we would tend to think that's nuclear. Now, seal 3 is the black horse, and here we see food talked about, and the idea that it's these are common foods, and that's they're we can just guess that famine goes along with war, disease goes along with war. But in a time of famine, apparently he has food, and he trades food for countries. Countries will surrender to him just by him offering them food. So he conquers, he threatens to conquer, and he trades in order to take over countries. And then in seal 4, the pale horse, death and hell follow with him, and death and hell have always been a big part of Satan's plan, and his that all three of those go together and always have. And it says here in this fourth seal that he is given power over a fourth of the earth. So at this point, at the 2.5 years into the tribulation, he's already taken over a fourth of the earth. Now, seal number 5, John sees martyrs under the altar in heaven, and they're desiring the justice for their deaths, and God tells them to be patient until their fellow brothers shall be martyred as they were, until their group is fulfilled. And we'll see their judgment, the martyrs' judgment, at the very end of the tribulation. But at this point, they're given white robes. And I don't know if this is the point at which maybe they have been spirits and they have received temporary bodies. Right now, they won't receive their glorified body until the end of the tribulation, when they receive victory over death and appear before the judgment seat of Christ. But they would have to have a body for this white robe, so they may receive temporary bodies. Now, Dr. Manfred Kober gives a compelling argument that everybody, when they die, every spirit that is saved and goes to heaven receives a temporary body, and that very well might be the case. But anyway, at this point, these martyrs do have some kind of a body for this white robe to be put on. And I believe this, it says under the altar. I might just say, while we're at that point, I believe that's the area underneath the judgment hall. I believe there are 3 huge areas inside of New Jerusalem. The bottom one is the kind of the park area. The middle huge area is the judgment throne room of Jesus, and that will be also where we will worship. Huge area. And then the top inner room, or inner huge area would be the ruling throne of Jesus. The judging throne in the middle, the ruling throne on top, and the inner sanctum, or the inner park area, the inner area that is going to be a huge, beautiful area. But I think that's where that would be underneath the altar, as it says. Now then, seal 6, that brings us to seal 6, and this begins the cataclysms on the earth. It says a great earthquake takes place, and we're going to see these all the way through the tribulation, over and over and over again, earthquake after earthquake. And I think some of the descriptions are characteristic of volcanoes. So I think we're going to see earthquakes and volcanoes throughout the rest of the tribulation period. And this makes a lot of sense from what's told about the tribulation time. The earth is being shook down, it says. The mountains are shook down. The islands disappear. The valleys are filled in. So it's leveling the earth. And I think this is getting ready for the millennial kingdom. There's going to be a much larger land mass available for living space in the millennial kingdom. And this is not only the judgment of God, but it's the renovation of the earth. And we'll see that by the many, many earthquakes. Now, it also is called the great day of his wrath. And this brings in, there's going to be a group. In chapter 5 there was a group, and then there are groups coming up that will appear before the judgment seat of Christ, but we'll look at those when we get to them. But many have made a lot out of this. This is the time when things are really getting bad, really, really bad on the earth. And earthquakes, as you think about those, there are many earthquakes that take place in the world every day. Every day there's 50, 60 earthquakes take place, above 2.5 on the Richter scale. And even more than that if you counted the ones less than 2.5. But many, many quakes take place every day. But in the 20th century, in the 1900s, there were only 18 earthquakes that were 7.0 or greater. And so the bigger ones are very rare, and they don't go up by just slightly, like say a 5 on the Richter scale, the 6 is just a little bit more powerful. No, the 6 is 32 times more powerful than a 5, and a 7 is 1,000 times more powerful than a 5. So it goes up exponentially as the Richter scale numbers increase. And this great earthquake in seal 6, I believe, is a super volcano. I believe it's a I believe it is a full RIP 9 earthquake. And we've seen one of those in 2004 in Indonesia, and the accompanying tsunami killed over 200,000 people in the Indian Ocean area. And so we can get an idea of what this is going to be like. There's going to be massive, massive death and damage, and just it's going to be a terrible, terrible time. Now, along with these great earthquakes, a lot of times they're accompanied by a huge volcano as well. And a lot of the descriptions given here, the sun being darkened and the moon looking as blood, some of those are kind of characteristic of a volcano more so than, so we might think that there is an accompanying volcano with this as well. And if it would be a super volcano, the experts give us 7 most likely spots for the occurrence of a super volcano, and 3 of those 7 are in the United States. So 2 in California, and the most likely one is Yellowstone. And so we would certainly hope that this one in seal 6 is not any one of those 3, but but it's going to be someplace. There's going to be a great earthquake and possibly a super volcano somewhere in the world in seal 6. And then we see stars falling from the sky, he says, like a fig tree being shaken. These aren't, obviously, these aren't actual stars, because a star is like our sun, and so just one star hitting the earth would totally destroy it. So this is John's relaying what he sees as best he can, and it's like stars falling to the earth. And this could be an asteroid breaking up in the atmosphere, coming in small pieces, or a meteor shower, or it could be one of the 6,000 and some objects that are orbiting the Earth, and 2,600 of those are functioning satellites. But there may be weapons developed that can bring those down, or something about the atmosphere, or the way the sky is might bring them down. God may bring them down naturally, but and I might just say here, I don't know if this is true or not, but my information was that Elon Musk had more satellites than China and Russia combined. And China, that being the private sector and the government sector, and all of Russia. And so if that's the case, he has a lot of satellites, and that would be a bad situation there if those are satellites and are his. But anyway, we're starting into the cataclysmic events, and these are going to take place the rest of the way through the tribulation. Stopped at times for gatherings before. Whenever a gathering takes place in heaven, the new judgments on earth stop for a while. So we'll look at chapter 7 next, and then we'll go through all, and we might look at the 7th seal, which is actually verse 1 of chapter 8. We might look at that with chapter 7.